debate, and normally it's quite animated debate, around these topics which people are getting very upset about. And AI is one of those. We're going to see it, the good stuff and the bad stuff drive the clicks, but the bad stuff's a lot easier to find. So, for your own personal well-being, keep that in mind. The doom and gloom sells newspapers, it gets clicks. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the full truth. It's not the full narrative. Pick your sources carefully. We are going to continue to see AI being infused into all of our day jobs, into our workplaces, the variety of tools that's there, that is going to happen. You know, like anything, you use the tools that are available that are suitable. The difference will be how you're going to learn to use them and get value from those tools. And that will be an important part that we'll touch on lately. We are going to have to look at how things will continue to change. So the centaur phase, this is the human and the AI, coming together as one, the half horse, half man kind of image. So Dario Amodi from Anthropic had labeled this the moment where the two come together. So effectively the outcome that we're getting in the centaur phase is the combination of human and AI being greater than either one individually. And that harps back to some comments made about chess and the ability to use computers to effectively play chess, where the human and AI working in tandem yielded a much better outcome. The challenge with that is we do pass that phase where the AI gets better and better and better. This is the worst the AI is going to be. Every week we're seeing another release, something new, something exciting, another big announcement. That continues. Again, some of it is hype, some of the things are overblown, but there is often some good that comes from that as well. Each of you will need to consider where you're getting your news from and what you're going to consume. Because if you try and consume all of it, it's like drinking from a fire hose. You're not going to be able to absorb it. It's not going to be meaningful. You'll get a surface level understanding of all the news, the hype that's coming through, as opposed to the depth of knowledge, the depth of understanding, or the things that would actually be useful or practical to you. So I'd encourage you to find a few trusted sources of things that are relevant to your personal interests and potentially the career that you're looking to build for yourself. Lean into those sources, otherwise you'll just feel exhausted. Trying to keep up with that's really, really tough on an ongoing basis. Even if you love it, even if you're interested in it, there's just so much happening. And we touched on the restructures and the shifts. This is going to continue to happen. Now, you've probably heard the comments about you're not going to lose your job to AI, but you will lose your job to someone who uses AI. If you're sitting in this room, you're probably the person who uses the AI. You're already in that camp where you're ahead of the curve. So that's good. How do you stay there? That's the part that will continue to evolve. And that's the part that each of you individually will need to work through, talk to your leader about, understand what the strategy for your organization is going to be, and then work out how to get the best out of that. Your organization might be doing great stuff supporting you. Maybe you're studying, you've got access to great academics, you've got opportunities like this to come to events and learn. That's self-directed, as well as things coming out of your employer or your educational backgrounds. Lean into them. The reason I highlight that is actually around the skills that we think about, the way we hire people. So if I now put on my hat as a hiring manager and I think about the people who I'm wanting to employ, or the individuals who work for me in different functions, what are the skills that they exhibit? If you haven't heard of I-shaped skills or T-shaped skills before, I am going to cover a little bit of that, so forgive me if you've heard of it, but just for everyone from an understanding perspective, I'm going to focus from a technology lens for tonight. So with I-shaped skills, this is where most of us start. So you go through, you do a university degree, congratulations, here's a piece of paper that says that you are skilled in a particular domain. You've got a reasonably narrow focus. You might have learned a number of different things as part of that academic process. Now you're going to come into the workplace and start applying it. So in effect, you're going to take a job that's going to be related, more than likely, to your degree. This would be your domain specialty. So in this case, it's technology, and you're going to have a particular level of depth. So if you come and talk to one of your colleagues who works in marketing, they're going to have a different leg, if you will. So that's the I shape. So that marketing team, they're going to have very different skills to what you're going to have in a technology type role, whether you're an engineer, a developer, QA, whatever it might be. So you're a specialist in effect. You are probably an expert in your domain after a number of years working as a trusted source in your role. and your company's going to rely on you. They're going to look to you to be able to solve problems because you bring the technology skill and the technology knowledge alongside with your organizational knowledge. And that's great. So that gives you a level of career protection. But what happens if AI comes along and it starts eating away at what's your specialty? And that's the risk we're now staring into. I have a close friend who was studying animation, hand animation. You can imagine how uncomfortable it is when you've spent 2 years of a 3-year degree going through and learning this as you start seeing generative AI tools coming out that do exactly what you do in fractions of a second for things that would have taken you weeks or months. So what do you do? Well, this is around creating resilience through diversification of your skills. What we now go into is the T-shaped skills. So if you think about the T-shaped skills, this is saying I have a really good grounding in a particular domain, but I'm now going to start picking up additional skills or additional depth in other areas. So that might be in a larger organization, working on projects, you're going to be exposed to certain things. So how do I run a project? The governance overheads that go with that. Maybe it's thinking about how do I work with the business to understand the requirements, the product ownership, if you will, that goes into that. Now, in many companies today, you'll have very distinct roles. So you've probably got a product owner and a scrum master and some developers and someone doing QA and someone else doing change and comms, and all of those things are distinct roles. What we're then going to see, though, is, again, that consolidation of the capabilities. I've now got AI that can start helping me do those tasks. Do I need a squad of 12 people if I have 6 really passionate people and some really good AI? What happens when that really good AI becomes excellent? Do I need a squad of 6 people or do I need a squad of 3, 2, 1? This is where it gets really interesting. And the dynamics of this are changing so quickly that you need to be thinking about what you are personally interested in and what you are not. So one of my early pieces of career advice for anyone is to, if you're not sure what you'd like to do, at least work out what you don't want to do. So as an example, I don't enjoy operations type roles where I know that each day I'm going to get 100 widgets, I need to do a task and then I output them on the other side. That's too predictable, it's a little bit dry for me. I like things that are more challenging, the problem solving, the creative side, being able to think about what's a new product. So for me, I'd be thinking about where my interests are and where my skills are that will allow me to lean into those kind of areas. And product ownership is a big one. And there's a couple of things I've called out there. If you are thinking about going into the workforce, I'm going to take a job because we all need to eat and pay bills, but I'd like to build a business. I'd like to do my own startup. I want to have a side hustle. These are the skills that you're absolutely going to need as a bare minimum. It's great that you've got the technology skills. That will only get you so far. There is some incredible technology that's been made available over the years, but because they didn't have the right go-to-market, effectively getting the message out there, say, hey, I've got this amazing tool, it never really got legs. And then there's been some arguably stupid ideas which have had great go-to-market that the consumers have picked up, like Twitter, where if you had have said, day one before Twitter was big, you would have gone, seems like a pretty ordinary idea. These things can explode. So that go-to-market approach is absolutely critical to be able to drive that through. As you expand though, we then get into a more interesting area. And this gets referred to as either M-shape, N-shape, sometimes V-shape or pie-shaped skills. So in effect, it's T-shape, but you actually start forming another specialty. So this is the additional leg. In this case, it's the product ownership, for example. Maybe you're going deeper on that side. And the reason that I call that out is that this is where you get into an interesting space working with AI. So this is as a leader of agents. I have a squad of agents. I can be really efficient if I understand the end-to-end and I know what their strength is and I know what my strength is. So the creativity, the understanding, the human aspects of what we're going to do are really important as we get into this. So my one ask of each of you would be to think about what are your individual skills, your strengths, your interests, and what don't you like? Because this is going to be important. One of the things that we can't replace with AI today is spoken communication in a meaningful way in the workplace. Written communication, exceptional. You can use AI, I can send my emails, I can draft reports, whatever it might be. But to walk into one of your colleagues and have a conversation with them face to face or to draw something on a whiteboard, that communication skill, critical still. Now sure, I can go and create a virtual avatar of myself that can go and speak, and it can do that in a very polished way. But the ability to communicate is still intrinsically human when we're having those conversations in the workplace. So how do you supercharge that yourself? As an introvert, this was a skill that I set myself a task on, and I had to learn public speaking. I absolutely hated public speaking. And I was fortunate enough to have a manager who pointed at me and basically said, this is the level that you stop at unless you go and do something about that. So I had to move out of my technology safe cocoon into a very uncomfortable space where public speaking was par for course. Not surprisingly, critical thinking is the other part to this. The quickest way to work out if someone knows what they're talking about in my mind is to throw them a whiteboard and go, can you explain that to me with a couple of boxes on a whiteboard? If you can explain it with a couple of boxes on a whiteboard, you probably understand it. I can talk about lots of different things and I can say all the right words, but it doesn't necessarily mean I can explain it well. It doesn't necessarily mean that I understand it well. It's a great leveler. So using critical thinking to break things down, to understand the depth of what you're trying to achieve, really, really important. One of my favorites, curiosity. Curiosity is one of the things that keeps me alive. I like to tinker, I like to play. It gives me intrinsic enjoyment in the work that I'm doing. I'm solving problems, but I'm looking for unique ways to solve that. Not necessarily the quickest, fastest, the most optimal way, but looking at, is there another way of going around and fixing this that might not have been seen before? That is another way of challenging AI, because you don't see that level of creativity coming out. It's effectively a mirror back of things that's seen in the past, maybe with some deep reasoning, but good to be able to take that forward. And that leads me into then, what would you need to think about from a career perspective individually? Resumes are almost useless now. If you've looked at LinkedIn jobs recently, every job, even if it's only been posted for 24 hours, you'll look at that and you'll see over 100 people have already applied. Any job of any interest for the people that are in this room, guarantee over 100 people. Apply now, apply now, apply now. It's really easy just to click that. As a talent leader, someone who's looking at those resumes, whether it's an external recruitment company or internal, all of the resumes start looking the same with AI. They're all really, really high quality. So how do you stand out when it's commoditized? What I'm seeing as really good standout points is the ability to show me what you've done. So how do you showcase your work? What is it that you've worked on that you can share a real practical example? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you've delivered a multi-million-dollar system into a large enterprise. It can be experiments that you've done at home. It can be worked examples. It can be prototypes you may have built out. But take me through the step. Explain what you were thinking, what you were trying to achieve, and what you've learned from that. What was the technology that you used? How did you go about solving that? Why was that a problem you were trying to solve? They're really interesting for me because it helps me understand you as an individual, what drives you, motivates you, and helps me to understand how you're going to think. Can I see you in my workplace solving my problems with that thought process? Yes, I can. Great. The rest is academic. It's have you done the right qualifications? Have I seen the right work experience? That is the secondary part. If you've got yourself GitHub, have a public page, let people see what you've been doing as well. It's just about sharing what you've been able to do. And finally, as I said at the start, build your network. When you've got hundreds of people applying for the same jobs, it's really difficult to stand out. But I can tell you that I will always go and look at a resume if I have someone who comes to me and says, hey, I know someone who'd be great for that role that you're advertising. They've done X, Y, and Z, and I think they're a great operator. I'm going to go and check that resume. I'm going to read through it, and almost always will take them through at least to the first round interview. Building your network is really important. So don't underestimate the amount of value that comes from that. Use the networking time tonight wisely, make some connections, and build your LinkedIn. Now, unfortunately, I have to run to the airport, so I can't live my value on this one, but I am going to invite you, if you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do, and forgive me as I hand back to Jason. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Nick. Nothing beats having a hiring manager here giving you tips, right? With the next one, we got another hiring manager, CEO from Before Pay, Jamie Twist. So if I can invite Jamie to come up. So a little bit of background on Jamie. Jamie is the CEO of Before Pay Group, a mission-driven lender that writes more than 40,000 small loans every week with a team of 50 people. And is one of the biggest aggregators of banking data in Australia. And it also runs a subsidiary called Carrington Labs, which builds credit risk models using transaction data for lenders globally. Previously, he was the CDO of Westpac Bank during the implementation of open banking, and currently sits on the board of data standards advisory boards. He speaks frequently on the future of lending and the use of data-driven analytics in risk management. So he holds a degree from Harvard and Stanford, and is a finance fellow at the Aspen Institute. So please welcome Jamie.